Imagine handing a $300 billion blank check directly into the center of the world's most volatile conflict zone.
Right, with the stated intention being reconstruction and peace.
Exactly. But the reality is that an economic injection of that staggering magnitude, well, it instantly alters the geopolitical gravity of the entire region.
It is a calculated gamble. I mean, does it purchase a lasting ceasefire, or does it quietly fund the next generation of regional warfare?
Good morning. Welcome to a briefing on current events in the region and the country. You are joining us for a rigorous, objective examination of the global intelligence landscape.
And before we begin our analysis, we must acknowledge our sponsor, ProWave AI.
Yes, this deep dive into the source material is generated by Stylo News, which is the AI-powered news application.
For our purposes today, we are conducting a special 2-week analysis of the Middle East crisis.
To give you the precise parameters, the title of this briefing is Middle East Crisis Update, 25 June 2026. The region of focus is the Middle East, and today's date is the 25th of June 2026.
Now, it is important to provide some brief context regarding the platform we are utilizing today. Stylo News is the consumer version of the Stylo Intel Ops software.
Right, an architecture originally designed for enterprise operations.
Specifically to support the complex needs of government, military, and international business sectors. What this means for you, the listener, is that you have unique access to an analytical tool designed fundamentally to assist global decision-makers.
Decision-makers who are navigating highly complex, rapidly shifting geopolitical environments. So our mission today is to process the latest intelligence through 3 key lines of strategic analysis.
Yes, beginning with Iran, Hezbollah, Hamas, and the Houthis. Can they preserve their military capabilities, maintain regime stability, and continue to impose costs through proxy forces and operations?
Precisely. Second, concerning the United States and its regional partners. Can they degrade Iran's capabilities, restore deterrence, and, well, create the conditions necessary to return all parties to diplomacy?
And third, focusing on Israel. Can the state protect its population and critical infrastructure while shaping conditions for a sustainable peace arrangement?
We must approach this with the understanding that these are not isolated local events.
No, not at all. They're deeply interconnected strategic, economic, and military challenges. An artillery strike in one sector or a diplomatic memorandum signed in another, it directly influences global markets.
Global energy security, too. And the broader international balance of power. We are looking at a single, cohesive theater of operations,
where a ripple in one corner creates a wave in another.
Let us begin our assessment at the tactical epicenter of the current crisis. We will examine the ongoing operations in the Gaza Strip.
The operational tempo there remains, well, remarkably high. Over the last 24 hours, intelligence reports indicate continued active Israeli strikes across multiple sectors.
Yes. Specifically, the data details a drone strike in the Remel neighborhood of Gaza City. That tragically resulted in the death of a teenager and wounded several others.
We are also tracking reports of strikes and heavy shelling in Rafah to the south,
as well as Beit Lahia, Al-Mawasi, and Sheikh Ajlain.
That sustained, high-intensity operational tempo directly informs our primary intelligence assessment regarding the potential disarmament of Hamas.
Right.
The assessment concludes, with medium-high confidence, that Hamas disarming is highly unlikely in the near term. We really must look at the mechanics of why that is.
The structural reasons behind it.
Exactly. Armed groups operating under sustained military pressure rarely, if ever, surrender their weapons absent 3 critical elements.
And those are?
A binding political settlement, a credible third-party enforcement mechanism, and a survivable pathway for their leadership.
And looking at the intelligence, none of those conditions exist in the current reporting.
Not a single one. From the operational perspective of Hamas, the continued Israeli strikes provide them with the ideological justification and, frankly, the perceived tactical necessity to retain their arsenals.
So asking an armed group to voluntarily disarm without a political settlement, while military strikes are actively ongoing, it's effectively like asking someone to discard their umbrella while the storm is still raging around them.
That is a very grounded analogy. It fundamentally contradicts the basic laws of self-preservation in a kinetic conflict zone.
However, we must also examine Israel's stated strategic perspective. Their objective is to protect their critical infrastructure and their civilian population.
Yes, while systematically dismantling these militant capabilities.
So if I may push back on the broader mechanics here,
Hmm.
how does this tactical reality, the necessity of ongoing urban warfare to clear threats, actually prevent the broader strategic goal of a sustainable peace arrangement?
Well, that is the central paradox of this theater. The contradiction lies entirely in the sequencing of strategic objectives.
How so?
Israel's tactical imperative to clear militant infrastructure requires what the military calls kinetic action, meaning active, destructive, and lethal force.
Which inherently produces civilian casualties and widespread physical destruction.
Right. And that tactical action, however necessary from a security standpoint, actively undermines the strategic goal of a negotiated peace.
Because the devastation hardens the resolve of the opposing force.
Exactly. It provides them with fresh recruitment narratives and inflames regional sentiment against the operation.
You simply cannot negotiate a complex, sustainable governance transition or establish a reconstruction framework while the foundational security environment remains a state of active, daily combat.
The intelligence suggests that while we might see temporary, localized pauses, a formalized disarmament is fundamentally incompatible with the current battlefield realities.
Israel's inability to forcefully disarm Hamas in Gaza without a comprehensive political settlement directly mirrors the strategic nightmare they are currently facing on their northern border.
Yes, moving our focus to Lebanon, the conflict is becoming deeply intertwined with religious observance
Historical grievances, too.
and the fragile stability of the Lebanese state itself. Today, Shiite Muslims worldwide are commemorating Ashura.
For those who may not be familiar, this is traditionally a profound day symbolizing sacrifice, resistance, and martyrdom.
But this year, the observance carries an exceptionally heavy historical weight. It is completely overshadowed by the events of February 28th, 2026.
The date of the Israeli airstrike that killed Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei.
The convergence of this profound religious mourning period with an active, escalating military conflict creates a highly volatile, highly unpredictable environment.
When we look at the scale of the engagement in Lebanon, it is staggering.
I mean, Israeli Foreign Minister Gideon Sa'ar recently stated on the record that Hezbollah has launched over 7,000 rockets and drones at Israel since March alone.
7,000. That relentless exchange of fire has systematically devastated Shiite-populated areas in southern Lebanon and parts of Beirut.
We are looking at the displacement of over 1 million people, citizens who are now observing the solemnity of Ashura amidst the physical ruins of their own communities.
And the diplomatic impasse blocking a resolution here is incredibly stark. Israel has adopted an uncompromising stance.
Very uncompromising. Defense Minister Katz and Prime Minister Netanyahu have unequivocally refused to withdraw Israeli forces from the southern Lebanon security zone.
Conversely, Hezbollah demands a full and complete Israeli withdrawal before any cessation of hostilities.
We are witnessing the physical manifestation of this diplomatic deadlock right now, with continued Israeli strikes reported near the Ali al-Tahrir Ridge and ongoing shelling in Hadatha.
Furthermore, when we step back and analyze the broader social media sentiment surrounding these events, we observe a deep, entrenched polarization.
Yes, one that perfectly mirrors the physical conflict on the ground. The sentiment analysis reveals a deeply fractured digital landscape.
Which is crucial because it dictates the political maneuvering room for these leaders.
Precisely. One distinct narrative viewpoint characterizes Israel as the primary aggressor, aggressively accusing them of violating previous ceasefires.
And indiscriminately targeting civilians.
Right. A counter-viewpoint, however, strongly emphasizes Israel's absolute right to self-defense.
Accusing Hezbollah of utilizing the civilian population as human shields.
Yes, and deliberately embedding sophisticated military assets within civilian infrastructure to maximize collateral damage.
And when looking at Hezbollah specifically, the divide is equally sharp.
A portion of the regional audience views the group as a legitimate, steadfast resistance force defending Lebanese sovereignty.
Meanwhile, others, including many within Lebanon itself, view them as dangerous, unchecked provocateurs.
Provocateurs whose unilateral actions are risking the complete collapse of the fragile Lebanese state.
That brings us to the Lebanese government sitting in Beirut. The intelligence assesses the government as stable, but structurally weak.
They are actively relying on British and French diplomacy to attempt to secure a ceasefire.
But wait, I have to push back on that phrasing. Stable but structurally weak sounds like an absolute oxymoron to me. If the government in Beirut possesses no monopoly on the use of force within its own borders and cannot control or direct Hezbollah's actions, In what practical sense are they actually stable?
A fair question.
I mean, how effective can Western-backed diplomacy truly be if the primary actors, Israel and Hezbollah, simply refuse to concede control of that southern security zone?
Well, that is an astute observation, and it highlights the central structural vulnerability of the modern Lebanese state.
The lack of coercive control.
Right. When analysts call them stable, they mean the administrative government hasn't collapsed into total anarchy or civil war. The ministries still open their doors.
But structurally weak means exactly what we just discussed.
Exactly. Diplomacy fundamentally requires the capacity to enforce the terms of an agreement, because the Lebanese armed forces cannot unilaterally compel Hezbollah to disarm.
Or force them to relocate north of the Litani River.
Right, and equally cannot force an Israeli military withdrawal. The government in Beirut is effectively paralyzed.
They are attempting to substitute international guarantees for domestic coercive control, using French and British diplomacy as a shield.
However, as long as Israel views a physical buffer zone in southern Lebanon as a non-negotiable core security requirement,
And Hezbollah views armed resistance to that zone as its fundamental existential mandate.
then Western-backed diplomacy can only manage the temperature of the escalation. It cannot resolve the underlying structural conflict without a much broader, comprehensive regional alignment.
And that broader regional alignment requires us to pan out to the macro level, looking at the primary state actors who are truly managing the ceiling of this escalation.
The United States and Iran, we have been closely monitoring the U.S. Iran Memorandum of Understanding, or MOU, which was signed just days ago on June 18, 2026.
This agreement has initiated a highly fragile 60-day diplomatic window aimed at ending regional hostilities.
But the most significant and frankly startling component of this MOU is the establishment of a $300 billion reconstruction fund.
I look at a number like that, and it feels like introducing a massive new gravitational pull into a solar system. Even if that money is strictly meant for reconstruction, it is going to fundamentally warp the orbit of every single neighboring state.
Your metaphor of a gravitational pull is exactly right. The introduction of a $300 billion fund fundamentally and permanently alters the economic and political incentives in the Middle East.
It is a staggering sum. And while designed to rebuild, it also introduces profound anxiety among neighboring states.
To manage this fallout, we are currently observing U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio conducting an urgent Gulf tour.
Visiting key nations such as the United Arab Emirates and Kuwait.
Yes, and his primary objective is to reassure these allies. They are deeply historically wary that this massive infusion of capital, even with strict oversight mechanisms, might ultimately be diverted.
Or at least free up domestic Iranian funds to strengthen Iran's military apparatus and its proxy capabilities across the region.
Despite this widespread anxiety in the Gulf, the intelligence currently indicates that a direct, state-on-state Iranian military attack on Israel is unlikely in the near term.
Tehran appears to be highly focused on prioritizing the preservation of these newly secured diplomatic and economic gains.
The Iranian regime is assessed as politically weakened following the sudden loss of its supreme leader and years of compounding economic pressure, but it remains structurally stable and firmly in control of the state apparatus.
It appears we're in a precarious strategic holding pattern. Both Washington and Tehran are keeping their engines running on the runway while trying to negotiate the flight path.
A holding pattern is the most accurate characterization, and as in aviation, holding patterns are inherently vulnerable to sudden external disruptions.
Let's look at the mechanics of failure here. What specific triggers could cause this 60-day diplomatic window to collapse?
The most likely trigger for a catastrophic collapse of this MOU centers on the International Atomic Energy Agency, the IAEA.
Disputes over the precise terms of nuclear inspections.
Right. Specifically regarding immediate access to highly sensitive or previously targeted military sites within Iran. That could rapidly derail the entire agreement.
If Iran obfuscates or denies access.
Or if the intelligence communities in the U.S. and Israel perceive the IAEA inspections as inadequate or compromised, the diplomatic pause could end overnight.
Furthermore, any unilateral mass casualty strike by either side, or the perceived collapse of deterrence on the open seas, could instantly shift the regional posture from cautious negotiation back to active, direct military confrontation.
That critical concept of maritime deterrence brings us to our final section of analysis.
We must examine how this overarching geopolitical tension manifests physically in the region's most vital economic arteries. the maritime choke points.
In the Strait of Hormuz, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC, has issued a formal, strict warning.
They are actively enforcing a mandate that all commercial vessels must coordinate their transit on Maritime Channel 16.
And must strictly utilize only the navigational routes explicitly approved by Tehran.
Let's examine the paradox here. If this Memorandum of Understanding is specifically meant to de-escalate tensions, and the agreement explicitly waives transit fees for this 60-day window,
Yes.
isn't the IRGC's rigid mandate on shipping routes a massive, contradictory flex of power? I mean, how does Iran use maritime bureaucracy as a weapon of coercion while technically abiding by the letter of a diplomatic pause?
It is entirely paradoxical to an outside observer, but to a defense analyst, well, it is a textbook application of what we call asymmetric statecraft.
Meaning unconventional tools.
Right. Using bureaucratic administration and maritime law to achieve strategic military goals, Iran is utilizing the guise of administrative safety to establish de facto military control over a global choke point.
By forcing international vessels to formally request navigational permission via Radio Channel 16.
Exactly. They are establishing a daily precedent of compliance without having to fire a single kinetic shot.
If a vessel refuses to hail them, Iran can simply claim the ship is operating erratically or presents a navigational hazard.
Which provides them with a quasi-legal justification to board, harass, or detain the vessel under the banner of maritime safety, rather than committing an overt act of war that would violate the MOU.
So it's essentially weaponizing red tape to remind the world who controls the faucet.
Precisely. And it allows Tehran to maintain a persistent low-grade pressure on global markets and their Gulf Cooperation Council neighbors.
Keep in mind, the Strait of Hormuz facilitates the transit of approximately 20% of the global oil supply.
Any disruption there immediately spikes global insurance premiums and energy prices, costs that you, the listener, feel directly at the gas pump and in supply chain inflation.
Furthermore, independent analysts highlight that while Iran is utilizing bureaucracy today, they retain a latent but high-threat military capability.
They possess the fire control reach to strike GCC critical infrastructure at a moment's notice.
This includes vital coastal desalination plants, which are obviously necessary for life in the region, and crucial oil export nodes like Ras Tanura in Saudi Arabia.
They are constantly reminding the region of their capacity to impose devastating economic costs rapidly, all while maintaining plausible deniability regarding any violation of the MOU's core terms.
And this strategy of applying asymmetric pressure at global choke points extends far beyond the Persian Gulf. Looking south to Yemen, the internationally recognized government remains deeply internally weak.
This fragility is evidenced by the recent Southern Transitional Council protests taking place in Aden.
Concurrently, the Houthi movement remains a highly significant, highly armed threat to both international shipping and to Israel directly.
They are certainly not dialing back. In fact, they have recently expanded their rhetorical target set, publicly declaring that any Israeli military presence as far away as Somaliland is now considered a legitimate operational target.
Finally, we must briefly acknowledge the broader neighborhood, specifically the situation in Jordan. While Jordan remains an anchor of stability, there's a persistent latent threat from ISIS networks currently operating in neighboring Syria.
It all serves to highlight the broader, enduring fragility of the entire Middle Eastern theater, a web of pressure points where one snap can unravel the whole structure.
So, to synthesize this intelligence and summarize the primary patterns you should be watching for in the coming days.
First, closely monitor the outcome of this 60-day MOU window between Washington and Tehran.
Right, and specifically, watch for any public friction regarding IAEA nuclear inspections.
Second, observe the Strait of Hormuz for any sudden incidents of vessel harassment or detention that could swiftly spike maritime insurance rates and global energy prices.
And third, keep a close watch on the localized border clashes in southern Lebanon. The severe risk remains that a single tactical miscalculation or an unintended mass casualty event there could swiftly derail the broader regional diplomacy we have discussed today.
Absolutely.
For those of you relying on accurate, timely information to navigate these complexities, whether for business, academic, or personal awareness, the Stylo News app provides a distinct, actionable advantage.
It really does. Available for both mobile devices and computers, Stylo News allows you to customize personal intelligence-style briefs.
Pulling directly from hundreds of traditional news sources and X, formerly known as Twitter.
It is designed specifically to cut through the noise, eliminate the bias, and deliver absolute clarity.
We highly encourage you to subscribe and get AI-powered news on demand by visiting www.stylonews.com.
Indeed.
Thank you so much for joining us today for this comprehensive briefing. We deeply appreciate your time. We invite you to request specific topics for future deep dives, and please remember to follow Stylo News on your preferred social media platforms for continuous, reliable updates.
As we conclude today's analysis, I leave you with a final thought to ponder regarding that $300 billion reconstruction fund attached to the U.S. Iran agreement.
Yes, a critical element.
Consider the sheer scale of that capital. Even if the weapons miraculously remain silent and this fragile diplomatic window holds firm, how does an economic injection of that staggering magnitude fundamentally redraw the balance of power, influence, and infrastructure in the Middle East over the next decade?
Something to carefully consider.
Good day.
Good day.